A night of frost and fortune. The wind howled a mournful dirge, whipping snowflakes into a frenzy against the Rolls-Royce's darkened windows. Montgomery Sterling scowled, adjusting the cashmere scarf that already nestled snugly around his neck. "Damned weather," he muttered, more to himself than to the driver, Jenkins, who remained impassively focused on the treacherous road. He hated winter. It mirrored the icy landscape of his own heart, a landscape he cultivated with meticulous care. He was late. The annual St. Jude's Children's Hospital benefit. An obligation, nothing more. He'd written a substantial check, of course, but his presence was expected. Appearances, after all, were paramount. Stepping from the car onto the snow-dusted pavement, he was immediately assaulted by a biting gust. The grand ballroom of the Grandview Hotel blazed with light and music, a stark contrast to the tempest outside. He strode through the entrance, his tailored coat a bulwark against the stairs, some admiring, others, something else. Pity, perhaps. He despised pity. He spotted Sister Agnes near the coat check, her simple habit a splash of serenity in the opulent chaos. She was young, far too young to be cloistered away in a life of piety. He found it unsettling. She approached him, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "Mr. Sterling, welcome. You must be chilled. Please, take my coat." She held out a worn, woolen garment, its simplicity a stark contrast to his own bespoke overcoat. He recoiled, both from the offer and the woman herself. "I hardly require it, sister," he said, his voice edged with disdain. "I am perfectly comfortable." He allowed his gaze to linger on her reddened cheeks, a faint flush against her pale skin. He knew he was being cruel, but some dark impulse compelled him. He needed to prove to himself, and perhaps to her, that he was impervious to her quiet compassion, to anything that threatened to thaw the frozen core of his being. The fortune he spent on clothing and shelter was more than enough to protect him. He offered a curt nod and swept past her, the scent of expensive cologne trailing in his wake. He could feel her eyes on his back, a silent judgment that stung more than he cared to admit. Pride before the fall. The ballroom glittered, a suffocating testament to Montgomery Sterling's success. He adjusted his tie, the silk a constricting reminder of the evening's obligation, a charity gala, beneath him, but essential for appearances. "Another million added to the coffers this quarter," he announced to the small cluster of socialites surrounding him, his voice cutting through the polite murmur. "Margins are up, projections exceeding expectations. Truly, a divine blessing." He caught Sister Agnes's eye across the room, a flicker of something unreadable in her gaze. He strode towards her, a predatory glint in his eye. "Sister," he boomed, his voice amplified in the sudden hush. "Pray tell, what does your faith have to say about exponential growth? Does it condone such rampant accumulation of wealth, or do you secretly yearn for a piece of the pie?" A nervous laugh rippled through the room. Sister Agnes's expression remained serene. "Mr. Sterling, faith teaches us to use our blessings for the good of others, not to hoard them." Montgomery scoffed. "Sentimentality. The world runs on numbers, sister, not prayers." He gestured expansively. "This entire spectacle is funded by the very hoarding you condemn. Aren't you grateful for my avarice?" Meanwhile, Lily, small and almost invisible amidst the opulent gowns and towering floral arrangements, wandered towards the edge of the dance floor. The music, usually a source of joy, felt overwhelming. She clutched a small, worn teddy bear, its button-eye dangling precariously. Her father was so busy, always talking about numbers and deals. She wished he would notice the drawing she had made for him, tucked safely in her pocket. She spotted a small fountain in the corner, its cherubic statue spouting a gentle stream of water. Drawn by the sound, she crept closer, dipping a finger into the cool water. A sudden shove from a passing waiter sent her stumbling forward, her teddy bear slipping from her grasp and splashing into the fountain's basin. Lily gasped, reaching for it, losing her balance, and tumbling headfirst into the shallow water. The world turned cold and dark. A moment of mischief. "Papa, I'm bored," Lily whined, tugging at the cuff of her father's impeccably tailored suit. He was deep in conversation with Mr. Abernathy from the bank, his brow furrowed in that familiar way that made her feel invisible. He patted her head absently. "Just a moment, sweetheart. Go play with the other children." But the other children were engrossed in a noisy game of tag, their laughter echoing shrilly across the manicured lawn. Lily didn't feel like running. She felt like exploring. Like doing something Papa would notice. Her gaze drifted towards the far end of the estate, where the frozen pond shimmered under the weak winter sun. It looked like a giant, frosted mirror, reflecting the bare branches of the weeping willows that surrounded it. She had been warned countless times to stay away from the ice, but today, the warning seemed more like an invitation. The air nipped at her cheeks as she wandered away from the party, the muffled sounds of adult conversation fading behind her. The crisp snow crunched beneath her boots, a satisfying sound that spurred her onward. The closer she got to the pond, the more alluring it became. She imagined herself skating across the surface, a tiny figure gliding effortlessly on the glassy expanse. Papa would surely notice her then. Reaching the edge of the pond, she hesitated. The ice looked thick, but a shiver ran down her spine. She picked up a small stone and tossed it onto the surface. It skittered a short distance before stopping, the sound strangely loud in the otherwise silent landscape. Emboldened, she took a tentative step onto the ice. It held. A thrill surged through her. Just one more step. The ice gives way. The pond shimmered under the pale winter sun, a deceptively solid expanse of white. Lily, bundled in her scarlet coat, edged closer, her breath misting in the frigid air. Her father, Mr. Sterling, was on a call, pacing near the edge of the woods, his voice a low rumble that the wind carried away. He hadn't even noticed her wandering off. The ice looked smooth, inviting. She tested it with a tentative foot. It held. Giggles bubbled up as she took another step, then another, venturing further from the bank. The surface glittered like 1,000 scattered diamonds. "Papa, look," she called, her voice thin in the vastness. Mr. Sterling didn't turn. Emboldened, Lily started to skip. A thrill ran through her as she imagined skating, twirling like the ballerinas in her storybooks. Just a little further, she thought, to that patch of untouched snow. A sharp crack echoed across the pond. The sound sliced through Lily's joy, replacing it with a chilling dread. Her eyes widened. A spiderweb of fractures spread beneath her feet. "Papa," she screamed, her voice laced with terror. The ice gave way. The world dissolved into a rush of icy water, stealing her breath. The cold was a physical blow, a crushing weight that stole the air from her lungs. She flailed, her mittens instantly sodden and heavy. The broken ice, sharp and jagged, scraped against her skin. "Papa! Help me!" Her screams were choked, swallowed by the water that clawed at her face. Panic seized her, a wild, desperate thing. She thrashed, her small body battling the numbing cold, the suffocating water. The scarlet of her coat swirled around her like a macabre flower. From the edge of the pond, Mr. Sterling finally turned, his phone dropping forgotten in the snow. His face was a mask of horror. A leap of faith. A collective gasp ripped through the festive atmosphere. The joyous carols faltered, strangled by fear. Faces, moments ago flushed with merriment, turned ashen. All eyes were fixed on the gaping hole in the ice and the small, bobbing form struggling within. Lily's high-pitched cries, thin and reedy, cut through the rising panic. Her father, Mr. Sterling, stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. He opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. Around him, people milled, hands fluttering uselessly, their voices a jumbled chorus of terrified suggestions and useless lamentations. "Someone do something," a woman shrieked, her voice cracking. Sister Agnes pushed through the throng. The air, thick with the scent of pine and wood smoke, now carried the sharp tang of fear. She saw Lily, her bright red coat a splash of color against the dark, churning water, her face contorted with terror. The ice surrounding the hole looked treacherous, thin and brittle. Every second counted. Without a word, she shed her heavy woolen cloak, the rough fabric falling to the snow-covered ground. Someone gasped. Underneath, she wore only her simple habit. The biting wind instantly raised gooseflesh on her exposed arms. She ignored the stares, the murmurs of astonishment. Her focus narrowed, sharpening. Taking a deep breath, she tested the ice gingerly with her foot. It groaned ominously. She moved slowly, deliberately, distributing her weight, her eyes fixed on Lily. Each step was a calculated risk, a prayer whispered with every crunch of the ice. The cold seeped into her bare feet, a searing pain that threatened to overwhelm her, but she pressed on, drawn by the child's desperate cries, the sound a lifeline in the frozen expanse. The ice cracked again, closer this time. She paused, her breath catching in her throat, before continuing forward. Rescue from the depths. The ice cracked again, a spiderweb of fissures blooming around Sister Agnes's flailing hands. Each movement sent shards slicing into her palms, but the biting pain was a distant hum compared to the scream lodged in her throat. Lily. She had to reach Lily. The water was a shock, stealing her breath in ragged gasps. It clawed at her habit, dragging her down, a frigid beast intent on claiming her as its own. She pushed forward, ignoring the way the icy grip constricted her chest, each stroke a battle against the encroaching numbness. Lily was further than she thought, a bobbing splash of scarlet against the gray water. Lily, she croaked, her voice thin and reedy against the wind. Lily's eyes were wide, reflecting the bleak sky. Terror had stolen her voice, leaving her silent, her small hands grasping uselessly at the slick ice. Sister Agnes lunged, the last patch of ice giving way beneath her weight. She plunged into the water, the cold a crushing weight. She surfaced, sputtering, and reached for Lily. Her fingers brushed against the child's coat, then grasped, pulling her close. Lily was shivering uncontrollably, her lips blue. "Hold on, Lilybug," Sister Agnes rasped, her own teeth chattering. With Lily clinging to her, a dead weight in the freezing water, Sister Agnes kicked towards the bank. Each movement was agony, her limbs heavy and unresponsive. She could see the blurry shapes of figures on the bank, hear the faint shouts, but they were distant, unreal. Strong arms suddenly reached down, hauling Lily up first, then reaching for Sister Agnes. Hands grabbed her, pulling her onto the frozen ground. She lay there, gasping, the cold seeping into her bones. A blanket was wrapped around her, rough wool scratching against her skin. Lily was beside her, sobbing, her small body trembling. "Sister Agnes," Lily whimpered, burrowing into her side. "You saved me." Sister Agnes managed a weak smile, her face numb. "Of course, Lilybug. Always." Shivering in regret. The biting wind followed them inside, even as burly men in black tie hustled Lily and Sister Agnes towards the roaring fireplace in the library. Lily, pale and trembling, clung to a thick wool blanket, her teeth chattering a frantic rhythm. "Daddy," she whimpered, her voice barely a whisper, "I'm so cold." Montgomery knelt, pulling her close, the rough wool scratching against his cheek. He felt a surge of protectiveness, sharp and unfamiliar. Dr. Albright, summoned from the gala, examined Lily, his touch gentle and reassuring. "She'll be all right, Mr. Sterling. Just a bit frightened and chilled. We'll get her warmed up." Across the room, 2 other doctors attended to Sister Agnes. She lay on a makeshift cot, her face ashen, her breathing shallow and ragged. Montgomery watched, a knot tightening in his stomach. He remembered his dismissive words earlier, his arrogant assumption that she was merely seeking attention. Now, seeing her so vulnerable, so clearly suffering, a wave of shame washed over him. One of the doctors pressed a stethoscope to Sister Agnes's chest, his brow furrowed. "Her temperature is dangerously low," he muttered to his colleague. "We need to get her stabilized immediately." They worked quickly, administering fluids and wrapping her in heated blankets. Montgomery couldn't tear his gaze away. He saw the beads of sweat on Sister Agnes's forehead, the tremor in her hands, the faint blue tinge to her lips. He thought of her plunging into the icy water without hesitation, of her risking her own life for his daughter. And he, in his self-importance, had treated her with disdain. The library, moments ago a symbol of his success and status, now felt like a cage, trapping him with his own guilt. He had been so focused on wealth and power, so blind to the true meaning of sacrifice and compassion. Lily coughed, pulling him back to the present. He squeezed her hand, his heart heavy with regret. A heartfelt apology. Lily's cough subsided to hiccups, her small body relaxing against his chest. The paramedics fussed around them, checking vitals, asking questions Montgomery barely registered. All he saw was Lily, her face pale but her eyes, thank God, open and focused on him. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice raspy. "I'm here, Pumpkin. I'm right here." He squeezed her tighter, the expensive silk of his tuxedo jacket wrinkling under his grip. He would burn every suit he owned if it meant she was safe. Once the paramedics were satisfied, Montgomery scooped Lily up and carried her back inside, ignoring the concerned murmurs and pointed stares. He spotted Sister Agnes near the buffet table, her simple habit stark against the glittering gowns. He approached her, Lily still cradled in his arms. "Sister," he began, his voice thick with emotion. He swallowed hard. I owe you an apology. A profound one." The words felt clumsy, inadequate, but they were the best he could manage. Sister Agnes's expression was serene, her gaze unwavering. "There's no need, Mr. Sterling." "There is," he insisted, Lily burrowing closer to him. "My behavior earlier was unforgivable. Arrogant. Cruel. And then you saved my daughter's life. You risked everything." The memory of her plunging into the pool, of Lily's terrified screams, tightened his chest. He lowered his head. "I was wrong about you, about everything. I judged you based on nothing. Thank you, sister. Thank you for saving Lily. I don't know how to ever repay you." Sister Agnes smiled gently. "You don't need to. Lily is safe. That is all that matters." She reached out and lightly touched Lily's cheek. "Rest now, little one." Lily gave her a small, watery smile in return. Montgomery felt a strange warmth spread through him, chasing away some of the coldness he usually carried. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to be a better man. A new beginning. Sister Agnes's smile held no judgment, only warmth. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice a gentle balm, "what's done is done. My concern now is for Lily. And for all the children we serve." She squeezed his hand, a gesture that sent a jolt through him, not of discomfort, but of something akin to shame melting away. He cleared his throat, the air thick with unspoken apologies. The opulent ballroom, once a stage for his ego, now felt like a confessional. "Sister," he began, his voice surprisingly steady, "I want to help. Truly help." He moved to the microphone, silencing the murmurs that rippled through the room. The spotlight felt less blinding than before, less like an interrogation. "Tonight," he announced, his gaze fixed on Sister Agnes, "I'm pledging $1 million to her charity, Hope's Cradle." A smattering of applause began, but he wasn't finished. "And more than just money, I pledge my time, my resources, whatever she needs to help these children." The following weeks were a revelation. Montgomery traded boardrooms for soup kitchens, spreadsheets for storybooks. He'd always seen the world through the lens of profit and loss, now he saw it through Lily's eyes, wide with wonder at the smallest kindness. He helped Sister Agnes organize a summer camp, reading aloud to the children, his baritone softening with each page. He even learned to bandage scraped knees, Lily his eager and frequent patient. One afternoon, as they were painting birdhouses, Lily looked up at him, her face smeared with blue paint. "Papa," she said, her voice serious, "Sister Agnes says you're a good man now." He ruffled her hair, a genuine smile gracing his lips. "Well, I'm trying, pumpkin. Trying to be worthy of a good woman's forgiveness." He glanced over at Sister Agnes, who was watching them with a quiet smile. He realized, with a pang of something he couldn't quite name, that he was starting to feel protective of her, a paternal stirring for this young woman who had inadvertently saved him as much as she had saved Lily.